Talk about standing up. Your name is?
Kelly Hale.
And you're the famous, among other famous restaurateurs, but you in particular went to court to deal with a very interesting lockdown scenario. Tell me about the scenario first.
Well, last Saturday at 5:30 a.m., the courts forced police to come and lock my doors, change the locks on me, and I'm locked out of my business now. I took this stand a couple of months ago when the vax passports were made mandatory, and I let the whole world know I wasn't going to accept that or enforce them on anybody. I put a sign up on my restaurant saying, "Say no to vax passports, all welcome at Jack's." So it's been a process. I knew it would eventually get to this, but I took this stand because if I don't, then nothing's going to change.
So when you went to court, I understood you represented yourself. How was it you were able to do that on your own? Did you get some free books? Did you speak to a lawyer?
No,
you didn't have a lawyer in court with you.
No,
How did you
no.
do it?
By the grace of God, Jane Scarf, who was a paralegal from Ottawa, was brought into my life, and another now good friend, Dave Freedom, who's from Toronto, who now lives near Kingston, who knew Jane. They've since got together with me, and that's how we're fighting this case. Now, Jane being a paralegal, she could represent me when I had my AGCO tribunal hearing through the Ontario courts. Now that we're in Superior Court, if I don't have a lawyer, I have to self-represent, because as a paralegal, she's not allowed to go into the court and represent. So just with their guidance, I was able to go in. Last Friday, I had to go to a Zoom call for Superior Court. The Wednesday before that, public health issued me with a 22 closure to lock my doors. So that night at 6 o'clock, the sheriff and the police came to lock my doors. I refused and they left, which told me that they were more on my side than not, because they had the authority to do that because it was a court order. 2 days later, on 2 hours notice on Friday, they forced me back into court to escalate that order to force the police to come and do what they did to me Saturday morning. So yeah, representing myself. The main reason I did that is because through Jane's advice, most lawyers will direct you to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, through Section 1, kind of has a backdoor loophole for a judge to make a decision against your rights and freedoms. So the Bill of Rights is cut and dried, and that's why we're using it. We used the Bill of Rights in my tribunal hearing with the AGCO. We used it last Friday, and we used it again yesterday in Superior Court. Health Unit's lawyers argued that what we're dealing with is a provincial jurisdiction, which the Bill of Rights does not apply. But I connected it through the criminal code, because when the AGCO came, they're putting enforcement on me, which makes them peace officers. But the double-edged sword is that by me asking for the vax passports and enforcing that on people, if they don't have one and want to come in, I'm supposed to use force to get them out because they're not allowed there. So that's tying me to the criminal code as well, Section 25(1) in the criminal code. So that the criminal code is federal, so that now ties the Bill of Rights into this whole thing for us. So it's very essential that we're able to use that.
So let's break that little sequence down again for those that are not familiar, which is most people, with this court procedure. So if you reverse engineer the outcome, they wanted you to be a peace officer to enforce this, which then forces you to go against your patrons' Bill of Rights, rights of privacy, and
Yes,
so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So that doesn't make you feel good.
No.
And
That's not why I'm doing this at all. I mean, the whole stance was all welcome at Jack's, no discrimination, and I'm not going to ask for personal medical information. And when it comes down to brass tacks, I mean, the government, they're the ones being discriminatory here. Who are they to decide who's essential and who's not? Is it not essential that I make money and make a living to provide for my family? You know, but yet a marijuana store is essential, a beer store and a liquor store is essential. You know, I serve food and I did serve alcohol. Grocery stores were essential, beer stores essential. Why am I not essential? You know, I'm still providing the same services they provided.
is that one of your main reasons for defying the illegal laws of lockdown? Because it's essential, right?
Yeah, well, not just that. I mean, being right with God, it is our duty to disobey dishonest orders, and these are all dishonest orders. So I'm doing what's right by God in this whole process.
Okay, so let's go last year. I mean, you've been running this restaurant business for how many years?
16 years we've been open.
Same location?
Same location, yes.
Okay, so last year we had the lockdown. What was going in your mind? What were you doing then?
Well, I had a lot of time off because 3 different times we were shut down. And at the time I was more of a bar than a restaurant, so takeout wasn't even a real good option for me because there just wasn't enough people doing takeout because people were there to drink first and eat second. So up until
first, eat second, hang out, the boys.
Yeah, so I mean up until they closed me down last Saturday because they had taken my liquor license, I literally overnight turned into a family restaurant, so it was pretty cool to see that transformation happen. But I had 8 months out of 18 up until this last time we opened. I was closed down, so I had nothing but time. I was always a seeker of truth, so I had a lot of time to dig deeper down the rabbit hole, and I found some pretty horrific truths of the world and what's really going on, and that led me to addiction and a lot of bad things.
What? That led, going down, discovering the truth into the rabbit hole, led you to addictions?
Well, because I was having a hard time dealing with the truths I was figuring out. It was really hard on me.
You never heard about something like this remotely back in the day?
I knew about these things. I knew about them, but when I really discovered how deep it goes and how evil and satanic things really are, it was hard to deal with. I mean, you can't unsee it once you see it, and once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep.
What are some of the points that hit home with you that you're mentioning that are devastating?
Well, just how evil things really are. The depths of evil, was
it the children? Was it drugs? Was it political corruption?
Political.
Particular one that's holding.
More the children than anything. Just the sacrifice of the children and what they do to the kids. It's pretty horrific. But the irony in all that is me going down that rabbit hole and using addictions to numb the pain ultimately led me back to Jesus, where I am now. So it was a process, but it was neat. It's neat to have experienced it, but it's brought me back to God in the end. So yeah.
So you went into an addiction to deal with your pain. Is there anything in that scenario you want to talk about? And then how did you come to know, Jesus, that particular faith, and how did that affect? What did you do after that? How did that help you?
Well, just the addictions that I got rid of, He cleaned me of in 2 weeks.
How did you find that? Did someone say, "Hey, you need to speak to Jesus," or?
No, it was my uncle had prayed for me for over 15 years to find Christ again. And when my mother died in 2003, she was the most spiritual person I knew. So that got me angry at God, and that's kind of where the spiral started. So going down that rabbit hole and ultimately finding God again made my uncle happy. So that's kind of where the process went. But I went to bed August 7th and prayed for Jesus to take alcohol away from me. And the next day I couldn't even drink a beer, and I haven't had a drink since. And then within 2 weeks, He cleaned me of every other addiction I had. And I know that it was for this purpose, to make the stand that I'm taking right now, because if I was full of drugs and alcohol, I wouldn't have the clarity and the peace of mind to really deal with what's happening, right? So He's doing this with purpose, and He's using me for a purpose, and I'm pretty honored and humbled to be doing it.
So when you're connected to Source, God, whatever, gives you a lot of insights, strategies, how to deal with the court drama.
Oh, he gives me the
creative answers.
Yeah, He gives me the voice. I mean, he's speaking through me, which is pretty amazing.
So you are high on truth.
Well, I like to say I'm getting wrecked daily on the Most High, and never a hangover.
So you're closer to your uncle now.
Much, yeah. It's amazing. We were like brothers growing up, more than an uncle and a nephew. And like I said, for many years, whenever he tried to have the God talk with me, I just pushed it away because I didn't want to hear it. Right. So I ran from God for a long time. Now I can't run fast enough in the other direction to Him now. So it's pretty cool.
So, in final closing, what would you say to your fellow restaurateurs in dealing with this political science?
Well, I understand the fear, because that's how we've been ruled by the 1%, is through fear and division, right? So, and I understand that. There was a point in time when I was living the same fear. By the grace of God, I was able to get through that fear and figure out the real truths of what's going on. So I don't know. It's not as simple as to say just stand up. Everyone's got their own situation. They're in their own predicament. I don't judge anybody for how they're dealing with this situation. I know it's hard on everybody. I'm just hoping that with my stand and what I'm doing, it helps give other people the inspiration and the boost that they maybe need to stand up to some of the things maybe they don't see as being right or true.
Okay. More information. People want to go in a restaurant, want to talk to you more personally. How can they reach you?
Well, obviously, I have a Facebook page, JakkTuesdays.com. If they want to reach out, my email is Jakk